Week 2, day 5, in your workbook, it's titled Joseph, and that's who we're going to talk about today. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, but he was the first son of Jacob and Rachel. Okay, so we're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 37. The 10 older brothers hate Joseph because he's the father's favorite. The father makes no secret. He goes so far as to make an ornate robe for Joseph to wear, and Joseph has a dream where his older brothers bow down before him. He probably should have kept that to himself, but he shared. And so the brothers end up selling Joseph into slavery and telling the father that he's dead. So Joseph ends up in Egypt. He ends up in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar is the captain of Pharaoh's guard. And he does very well there. He rises to the top of Potiphar's household, and until Potiphar's wife falsely accuses him of attempted rape, and he's thrown into prison. But while he's in prison, he demonstrates a skill for dream interpretation, and this skill eventually lands him in front of Pharaoh, where he correctly interprets Pharaoh's dream that there's going to be 7 years of plenty in Egypt, followed by 7 years of famine. Okay, so Pharaoh ends up making Joseph second in command, just right under him over all of Egypt. And he was in charge of the food storehouses, and so he stored up food during the years of plenty. And then when the famine came, there was grain and food in Egypt. So it affected the entire region. It affected Canaan, where Joseph's family still lives. Okay, with his dad thinking that he's dead. So in the second year of the famine, the dad, Jacob, sent the older brothers to Egypt to get grain. And so they travel there and they bow down in front of Joseph, just like his dream. They don't recognize him, but Joseph recognizes them. And Joseph wants to see his younger brother Benjamin, so he makes the older brothers go back and get Benjamin. And they come back with him, and they still don't recognize him, but Joseph finally reveals who he is to them. And then they go back home, and now they get Dad, Jacob, and the wives and the children and everybody, and they all come back to live in Egypt, where there's food, but where there won't be a happily ever after for the children of Israel. So Jacob eventually dies. The dad eventually dies in Egypt. All right. But he's not buried there. They take his bones and they bring him back to Canaan, and they bury him beside his father Isaac and his grandfather Abraham. And so, but everybody comes back and lives in Egypt, and eventually, time passes, and eventually Joseph dies. But Joseph is buried there in Egypt, but not before he gets the Israelites to swear an oath that they will take his bones from Egypt and bring them to Canaan when God delivers the promised land like he's promised. Okay, and so that takes us to the end of Genesis. That's it, girlfriends. That's Genesis in 10 days.